All right, big bro. I'm the youngin, so I missed out on a lot of the mama like actual stories, but I've heard some of them. I was wondering if you could share, like some of the top things that maybe I missed. Just share with everybody.
Oh yeah, my mama refers to my grandmother, Charlene Jack, who Charlene Cushenberry Jack, as she would say, who was she's my grandmother, but I call her mama. So she raised me from when I was younger. I think she was born in I want to say 1917 in Louisiana, and I mean if you know my grandma, she has a ton of stories, a ton of character. She got like funny stories or things that she just do that was serious. They just were super funny to us. She got so many heartfelt stories. I think she was one of 13 children, and some of her siblings. She was there when they passed away or when accidents happened. Like she got all these stories. When I was young, I just never could believe these stories was true, or I never could just take her seriously until I became late in my teens, and it started to be shown that these things were true. But it was always fun. I know you and I, we always laugh about it and everything. But bottom line, she took me in as a toddler, as a little one. My dad, it's my dad's mother, so she took me in. My dad was working and doing his thing. My mom was doing her thing or whatever. So I was raised and left. I was established that with my grandmother, and she taught me a lot, man. She came from like that post sharecropper kind of time, early 1900s. She has a ton of stories, a lot of things that she saw. The whole black and white thing, and man, just amazing stories. And she was a strong person, big not a big lady, but big hands, strong worker, deep voice, all that kind of stuff. She used to have this one line that she would say when people would call us, and I can tell it was like a bill collector or somebody who don't normally call us. So she'd answer the phone, and she would just have this thing that she would always say. She'd answer the phone. I can't hear the person on the other end, but I know they probably said sir, and she would always say the same line. Baby, I'm not a sir, I'm a ma'am. My voice just heavy because my daddy used to whoop me with a wet rope. And I was like what? Like I'm thinking of this in my mind, like, why would you say that? Why would you tell somebody that? But that she was dead serious. Like she just tell the people, what it is. So man, she taught me, a lot about respect, and taught me how to cook and clean and different things that, you just learn growing up around a grandmother. People tell me you have an old soul and all that, just because of things you grew up with around grandma. Grandma took me to church. She introduced me to church and introduced me to, scripture and God and those type of things and all that. But, funny stories, man. Man, there are some great ones. So I think one of my funniest stories I like to tell is I'm in college, and so we come home for the weekend. I think one of my buddies named Carlos. I can't remember if he drove or he had a car. Somehow we had a car, and if I could get home for Houston, it doesn't matter how I can get a ride. I'm trying to get home for the weekend. Come home and see my friends, party, help my friends meet one of my college friends, whatever. So we come in, we stop at grandma's house. Got to see grandma. We come home from school. So we stop, and one thing about our house, the house that I grew up in, it has burglar bars on it. So if you don't know what burglar bars are, it's literally like metal bars all around the windows, and one that covers the door, and you have a key. It's key in and key out, right? So my grandma was dead serious about her burglar bars and about her house being locked up, and she had one key, and she was the only person that had the key. So we pull up, me and my buddy, it's early in the day. We're going to visit my grandma for about an hour. Then we out. We finna hit Houston. We finna meet my friends. We finna go out, all that. So we pull up on my grandmother. She let us in, and we sitting on the couch. Now, my friend Carlos, he's a light-skinned dude from Louisiana, real light-skinned, wavy hair, light eyes. He like your typical kind of Creole, Louisiana-looking cat, right? And so we pull up, we sit on the couch, we talking to grandma. She's so, oh yeah, baby, how you doing? And I'm from Louisiana too. And she's saying all this good stuff about Louisiana. and whatever. So we sitting there just chilling, just talking to grandma, right? But at this point, my grandmother had kind of started losing a memory, losing a little bit, like losing like a little memory, a little step a little bit. I didn't really kind of know that. In hindsight, that's what it was. So she would misplace things a lot, or she would hide things from other people, but she ended up hiding it from herself, you know, making sure, you know, she got her stuff in order and in line, and nobody's messing with her stuff. So we're sitting there, and I'm noticing the conversation kind of changing. Now, I've lived there. I grew up there, so I know when the atmosphere is kind of changing, and I know kind of what things to watch for. So it went from smiling and laughing and talking to she started kind of moving around the house a little bit as she was talking, and she started saying things like, yeah, baby, I'll give you anything you need. You don't have to take nothing from me. And you know, I share with people. I'll give people something, and all you gotta do is ask me. So I immediately, knowing I've been there, I done got this feeling. So I just looked at Carlos and I'm like, you know, hey, we finna go because, you know, maybe something ain't right. So what I didn't realize is Grandma hadn't eased over there and locked them burglar bars on us. So we locked up in there. So I'm like, well, Mom, we finna get ready to go. She's like, no, y'all ain't finna. Now y'all ain't finna get ready to go because, baby, y'all need something. I'll give you anything you need. You ain't got to take nothing from. So I'm like, well, Mom, what you talking about? Well, who took something? She's like, I'm looking for my purse. Where's my purse? All y'all got to do is give me my purse. If you need something, I'm like, Mama, we've been sitting here talking to you. Nobody had your purse. Nah. So then so I'm embarrassed at this point. Now, Carlos just puzzled. He just sitting there looking from left to right, just quiet. So she went from, oh, yeah, Louisiana. She was like, yeah, because I know people from Louisiana still. Yeah, people from Louisiana, you with them old, yeah, your old light skin, yeah, them old light eyes. And I'm just so embarrassed. And I'm like, oh, man, she embarrassed me in front of my friends. So she looking, and I know we not getting out of here. So now I'm looking, trying to help her find her purse. And she just talking away. And so finally, she lift up the seat cushion on her couch and find where she done stuffed her purse under the seat cushion, you know, hiding from somebody else, make sure nobody can go in her purse. And so she found her purse, and in typical mama fashion, she don't apologize to nobody. She just basically say, well, yeah, because I know, baby, I know where my stuff be, and I don't, I'll give people anything. I know I don't want nobody taking nothing from me, but whatever. So finally she eased back over there and unlocked that burglar bar, and we was out.
What did Carlos?
Carlos, well, we laughed all the way down 59, man. He was like, man, your grandma wasn't gonna let us out. I say, man, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. But they had known a lot of the stories I hadn't already told them about my grandma. So, man, we was laughing every time I tell a lot of people that story, and I'm pretty sure he still remember that. But it was great. It was amazing. That's there's 1,000 stories about just funny things that have happened with her. I can remember a time where when Sharon, obviously my wife Sharon, when we were dating in school, and then Shantae was her sister, they came over to our house to visit me for some reason. I'm probably 10th grade or something like that. 10th, no more than 11th grade. So they came by, they were visiting. We were sitting around talking. Again, it's always the same. Everything going fine, it's going good. And so I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know if I must have popped off or said something, or maybe she felt like I was showing out or whatever. I don't know what happened, but she started fussing at me, right? So she eventually told me, get out of here. So I'm taking my time finna get out, and I'm waiting on them. I'm telling them, like, come on, let's go. Then, if I'm getting put out, let's go. So I'm walking toward the door, and in our house, there's a long hallway that leads from the back room, a little hallway, and then it leads kind of all the way to the living room to the front door. And my grandmother was standing at the end of the hallway toward the back. I'm walking toward the door, but I'm kind of slow playing the walk because I'm waiting for them to come to join me. And something just told me, hey, turn around, like look back. And so when I looked backwards, my grandma had just released the hammer. She had a hammer in her hand, and she threw that hammer at me as I was walking toward the door. And when I looked back and I saw that hammer being released, and I saw that hammer starting to fly, and I ducked out the way, and bam, that hammer hit the door, and I hurry up and open the door and ran out the house like, what's up? What's going on? So I go out the house. I walk down the street, but probably like a block over. So I'm waiting. I'm sure my guests, my visitors that came to visit me are about to come out of the house behind me after all this chaos has happened. So I'm sitting up there and I realize I'm down at the corner for about 30 minutes. So I'm like, what's going on? So the way our house was situated, if you're in the kitchen and you're at the kitchen sink, there's a window that leads to the door. So you can see you can see if you're in the driveway or walking down the street, you can see the person like if they're washing dishes. So I walk by the house and I'm looking through that kitchen. I'm seeing the kitchen window, and I see Sharon sitting up there washing dishes with this like paranoid look on her face. And so I'm like gesturing, like, "Hey, but like, come on." She like, "No, I'm." So my grandma then put me out
and put them to work.
She didn't put me out and put my guests to work, put my business to work. So I waited out there about 30 minutes, and I just went on left and went back to their neighborhood. They came back to the neighborhood later on. She just put me out, throw the hammer at me, and put my guests to work. So yeah, it's crazy story. It sounds harsh sometimes, weird, but it was funny. It was weird. My grandma was very loving. She was very kind. She didn't do a lot of whatever, but she didn't tolerate no disrespect and no showing out. And I'm pretty sure that is not the only time I done had a visitor. I done had somebody come visit me, and I done got put out for saying the wrong thing or for showing out, as she would say. And she put me out, and the visitors had to stay there and still visit with her or get some work done because she didn't need some help doing something, and she didn't put them to work.
So what did they say? So when you left, what did they say? How did they even start watching it?
And grandma just told them what she needed to have done. She just told them what she needed to have done. I guess I just put them to work. I got my sister-in-law, Shantae. She loved my grandma's story. She got her own grandma stories, but yeah, she was. Yeah, my grandma was she was a character. She had my grandmother. She didn't have no type of. My grandfather carried a little gun. My grandmother, she didn't believe in guns, I don't think, or anything like that. But my grandmother, she had you might well say she had a .357 Magnum because she had a machete, and that was her weapon. She felt like a machete could end everything. It could handle any problem. And she kept her machete like under her bed, under her mattress. So if it was any problem, she grabbed that machete. But there were certain words and letters I guess my grandmother couldn't say. So she couldn't say the M's. She couldn't say machete. So she called it Lashavius. so she was like, "I'll cut you with this Lashavius. I'll cut." And I ain't saying a lot of the words and stuff my grandma used to say, but if she threatened you with that, and before you know it, she would pull it. If it was a problem, she would pull it on you. So I can't want. So we had we live in the hood, so we got a nice house, but looked like a little hood house. And so part of the garage, there was a hole that had developed in the garage, like right at the corner. This was like a small to medium sized hole that we had recognized. And so I noticed one night I was hearing something in the house, and I noticed things were kind of like a little disturbed. But I'm like, man, I don't, at that time we didn't have a dog or a cat or anything. So one night, sure enough, I'm going to the bathroom. I hear this clangling, this disturbance, like on the kitchen the kitchen counter where the dishes are. So me, I'm like probably like 11, 12 years old. I'm paranoid. I'm like, go wake my grandma up. Somebody in the house, something's going on. So sure enough, swing, she pull out her machete because it's gonna be she gonna handle whatever the business is with her machete. So come to find out, when she flicked the light on, I'm standing there. There's a large possum that has gotten into the house through that hole, and it was getting in at night and getting up on the counter. And so that was what the disturbance was. So I'm freaked out, first of all, because it's a possum and it's on the counter. So I'm basically behind her. She goes over, she doesn't miss a beat. She don't miss a step. She goes over to the possum, and the whole way she's walking toward it, she cussing it, she threatening it. And so all I know is I start hearing that that blade that cut air, swing, swing. And she went to swinging that machete at the possum, and I could hear the possum teeth on the machete. I can hear her cut, and I just closed my eyes. I just turned and went back because I didn't want to see the byproduct. She was like, "Oh yeah, you came in. You don't come up in here. You gonna come up. You gonna come up in here? I'll put this Lashavias on you, baby." And my grandma decimated that poor little possum for coming in the house that he ain't had no business coming into. But that was grandma. She defend the property. She defend the territory with her Lashavias. I don't know. She ever pull the Lashavias on y'all, on you?
No. I never met Lashavias.
Yeah, well, you lucky. She ain't pull it, because she'll pull it in a heartbeat. I remember my grandmother was afraid of lightning. This is one of those stories where it's not a funny story, but it's one of those where, man, I was like, my grandmother has been through so much. I never believed, I'm being honest, I didn't believe the story she would say. She talked about one of her sisters. They were holding hands, skipping down the sidewalk, and she stopped at the curb, and her sister kind of kept skipping. They were holding hands, and she got hit by a car. And she was saying, I just remember her hair flying in the air. She had such long, pretty hair. And then she tells another story about some other just major catastrophic thing that happened, and she was there. She has one story where she says her sister was cooking and the weather was bad. It was storming. It was lightning and storming. Her sister was cooking in the kitchen. So she was cooking with a cast iron skillet. She was cooking, and my grandmother said, I kept telling her, sit down. You got to respect what God, when the weather's bad. You got to respect what God is doing. Like, sit down, sit down. And she just kept cooking and said lightning struck her sister. And I never believed that story. I was like, man, that don't make sense. But she said lightning struck and her sister went flying one way and the cast iron skillet went flying another way. She always has a way of describing this stuff. So because of that, my grandmother was deathly afraid of any type of weather. So if it was lightning and thundering, anything, you had to turn off all the televisions. You had to cover the mirrors. You had to unplug the TVs and everything from the wall. And she would make a pallet right there in that long hallway I described in front of the restroom. And we would lay on the pallet until the weather passed, and then everything else would go back to normal. But she was dead serious about that. And so just any rain, even if it wasn't lightning, if it was just raining real bad, everything stopped, and you had to be still. You had to lay down somewhere and just chill. So one of the, I guess, kind of funny stories that came out of that is has evolved to the time where I think Martin had just started coming on Tuesday nights at 7:00. Martin. So I'm in the room getting ready to watch Martin. It started raining. I'm like, oh man, I'm just feeling it. Like, this is going to be a problem, because back then, you had to catch stuff that come on at the time it come on. It wasn't no rerun, watch it tomorrow, or series or whatever. You had to catch it, and Martin was the hottest thing going. So it started raining, and sure enough, she could hear it start raining, and it's thundered a little bit. She was like, turn them TVs off, turn that stuff off for now. So I'm like, oh man. So I thought I was going to be smart, because I didn't want to miss Martin. So I turned the volume all the way down, real low. Turned it down low, and I was just hoping she wouldn't come in there. I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. And so, man, probably about 5 minutes into Martin, she came in that door. She came in that door and was like, boy, you in here watching this TV and this lightning and thunder? And man, she fussed my head off so long. She snatched the card out the wall. And one thing about my grandmother, you would prefer she whoop you, or whatever she gonna do. If she whoop you with that mouth, if she just go to talking, you'd rather have a physical beating, because she gonna talk, and she gonna talk a long time, and it's not gonna be good. So yeah, she was definitely afraid of weather. But I tried to sneak in me an episode of Martin, and not thinking I was gonna get busted, and she came up in there and was like, she definitely made us respect when the weather was bad or anything like that. So it's just so many things though she been through, and she said that I didn't believe. And I guess the last thing I'll say is one of the things I didn't believe, and this is one of the first things that manifests in front of my eyes, and then that made me realize, okay, my grandmother's, she's telling the truth. And then other things people started to verify other things, and other things started to happen. But this is one of the most important things I'll never forget, or where it all started. So I remember I was going to Terrell Middle School. I probably was 6th or 7th grade, and I have pictures of, to verify this as well. My grandmother used to always talk about, over the course of my life, Ike Turner. That was her pride. I'm proud Ike. I raised Ike. I'm Ike's aunt. I used to live with them, and I had to help raise them and whatever. And I would be rolling my eyes and whatever, because Tina Turner was hot back then. You know, Tina Turner was big. So if you know Tina Turner, you know Ike. So I'm like I don't know why she say she know Ike or whatever. And so one day she said something. I couldn't remember what it was. I wasn't really tracking with it. But one day I came home from Terrell, and I walked in the house, and I saw my grandmother. I saw Uncle Joe, Uncle Worrell, and I saw Ike Turner. And I looked with a Malcolm X short set on, and I just looked like she was not lying. She was telling the truth. And he was sitting there with his little. He had the little box, the little flat top, the little box flat top. He had a guitar, and he was playing the guitar, singing, and Uncle Joe was singing, and they were just sitting there chilling, singing. And I came in there, and I was like, for 30 minutes, I was just looking for the left to right. Like, I can't believe this happening. Like, Ike Turner is sitting right in our little hood house. And he sat there, they played songs, and he called her T, like short for auntie, and he ate food, and they told stories or whatever. And this one, it got real. This one, everything really solidified for me based on what she had said and who she was to him in his life. A limo pulled up outside. It was getting probably like dusk, and he was there, and he had an assistant that was there with them as well, a lady. So assistant, but really that was. So he was like, "Well, T, I'm gonna get ready to go." I think he might have been staying at the Zaza or the W or somewhere. And my grandmother looked, and she realized he was about to leave, like go stay in a hotel. And she looked at him. She looked down that hallway I described, and we got 3 bedrooms back there. Her bedroom, my bedroom, and another bedroom. Small house, 1 restroom, and a little garage built onto the back. I already told you we had a possum come in our house. We've been frequented by some roaches and some other things, whatever. We in the hood, right? This is a hood spot. She looked at him, and she looked back down that hallway, and then she looked at him again, and then she said some words I won't say right here, but she was like, in so many words, "You better get your blanket blank back in that back room. What you mean you going to a hotel? You ain't gonna go to no hotel. You gonna stay right here." And then he looked at his assistant. She looked at his assistant, and she said, "And baby, you can sleep in that room over there." So she already done peeped the game, and she put him in one room and him in the other room. And he looked at her, who super rock star, whatever. He looked at her, and he said, "Yes, ma'am." And he got up and went in the back. And when that happened, and I saw that with my own eyes, I was like, okay,
hold on, she separated him. She put him to bed.
She told him, "You gonna stay here, and you gonna stay in this room." And then and trip, grandma ain't pulling no punches, because she already the peep game. She know, okay, that's your assistant, but no, that's not your assistant. So he looked at, I think her name was Janine or something. She looked at Janine and said, "And baby, you can sleep over there." So not only are you gonna stay here and not go to your fancy hotel, but then you're gonna stay here under my terms. You're gonna stay here, because I don't allow that in my house. So you're gonna stay here under what I've described. And the coldest part about it is he looked at her and said, "Yes, ma'am." And he went and did what she told him to do. And he got up and left that next morning. And so I was like, that was the beginning for me. I was like, okay, grandma ain't